Hello, everyone.
Hello.
We are going to be talking about some CSS stuff today. But first, I would like to thank all of our wonderful sponsors. I suppose that's weird because I'm kind of thanking myself, but
Thank you.
you're welcome. But yeah, Drupal Camp takes a lot of work, and we couldn't do it without each and every one of our sponsors. We appreciate them a lot. So, we're going to talk about mastering CSS, and this is going to be more of a developer's approach, because while I started in life as a graphic designer, I really took a hard turn into development, where it started as front end, and now I don't like the term, but I suppose I would be considered a full stack developer, because I do do stuff on the server, like making the website actually being set up. I write PHP, I'll tinker around with Apache stuff, but my true love is CSS. My name's Nick. I am a senior front-end developer at Culvert Labs. I maintain a lot of projects on Drupal.org, but I also maintain a project called Accessible Menu, which you can find on NPM, which helps make your life easier by making accessible menus use like one line of code and then it just goes. And I have also been recently working on a project called Dropple, which is a theme framework, because we got tired of using Bootstrap. And Tailwind doesn't really make sense for Drupal, just the way that it likes to compile things. So we decided, let's make our own. It's a lot of work, but it's been very fun, and I've learned a lot of lessons with CSS, making my own framework. And I do a lot of work with JavaScript, but lately I've been trying very hard to really take the mindset of, if pure CSS can do it, use pure CSS. It's faster than JavaScript. And like, as long as it's supported by every browser, like, it'll just work. Obviously, there's interactivity and accessibility things that you just have to do with JavaScript, but when possible, I like to just use CSS. And this is a picture of me last night, freaking out about my presentation, because as we're going to talk about, what are we going to do here? So, I'd like to talk about some new features that are fully supported in all modern browsers, and some that are almost fully supported in modern browsers if we have time. And we're going to go through a almost 100% live coding upgrade process of a layout. And then we'll talk about some pros and cons of different approaches to modern ways of doing things in CSS, because at first they might look like, oh, this is amazing. Oh, this like takes 2 seconds and now everything's done. There are considerations you have to take, and like some things that don't quite work the way you might think, even though it looks automatic. You still have to do a little bit of heavy lifting. What are we going to see? We're going to see probably CSS break all over the place while we're working on this, as is typical with CSS. But at the end of the presentation, I will hope everyone has a better appreciation for some things you can do with CSS. I find I found the center graphic. And to me, it really spoke to me over the past 2 years, because it does get into, like, when you're a junior developer, you start working in CSS, you go, man, CSS is so cool. I can do so many things. And then you start getting into, like, your more intermediate years, and you're like, no, it's really a big pain in the butt. Like, just use a framework. It does it for you. You don't have to think about it anymore. And then you get into your more senior years where people are asking you to do some really crazy things with CSS. And you realize that frameworks are actually like handicapping, like that you can't do it. And you have to basically ignore the framework entirely, write your own thing, and then try to fit it back into the framework so it still works. Which is kind of where we ended up when we made our own theme framework, because we ended up doing a lot of things with Bootstrap, where we got to the point where it's like it doesn't make sense to use Bootstrap anymore because we're writing so much custom code on top of it, and we're trying to hook back into Bootstrap because, you know, like the variables and stuff for spacers and all the consistent sizing, very useful. But at the end of the day, it turned into we're using some variables from Bootstrap and some columns from Bootstrap. And so why are we loading the rest of Bootstrap if that's all we're doing? And like I said, Tailwind, I love Tailwind. It's very handy. It's not something I think Drupal applications really need to worry about, just the way it works. Specifically with their compiler, because it tries to read what classes you're using. Meaning if you have layouts in your database that have classes on them, it will never know those classes are used. And so it will strip them right out of your end result, which is unfortunate. So, the next thing that I want to talk about, in my title, I called a developer's perspective for sustainable styles. What are sustainable styles? It's pretty simple. I find that sustainable styles are easy to read and understand. You should be able to look at your CSS and pretty much know what it's doing. Easy to alter, so when you need to edit it, it doesn't take you a day to rewrite a thing because you wanted to change, oh, I needed to adjust the padding on this side and I didn't account for there could ever be padding on that side. So now I have to rewrite this whole component to handle the fact that I can maybe change the spacing every now and then. And then the next thing, that's the most important part. I'm sure anyone who is a CSS developer, or any developer really, will appreciate this. Don't write code that makes future you curse current you's name. Because you'll come back to your code and be like, what on earth did I do here? And maybe you won't be too happy with yourself. So just my little thought, be nice to future you and your colleagues. Because also if your colleagues run into your bad code, you might have other problems. Okay. So, I find there's 2 steps to style sustainably. I promise I won't trip over that word constantly, hopefully. And really the main things are, take your styles, make incremental improvements. The tinier the better. If you just want to start with a little tweak there, clean up some code, push it, cool. Next week or whatever, your next code release, little more fixes, push them, awesome. And eventually you'll get to a point where you have some nice clean CSS code. And then the next step will be to embrace modern methods, because there's a lot of things we used to do with CSS, or perhaps still currently doing, like I'll show in my demo when we get to there. There's a lot of things we do in current CSS that there's just better ways to do them now, and they're built into the browser. An example that I just learned moments ago in Megan's talk, light mode, dark mode colors. There's a function for that in CSS that you can just say, here's my light mode and my dark mode color. Please use whichever one is appropriate. I didn't know about that, and I'll let you know it's going to be implemented into our theme framework in the next week or 2. So always make sure you're looking at what's supported. I would also recommend keeping an eye on what's almost supported. Generally, I find features that are like, oh, they work in Chrome and Safari, but not in Firefox, but in Firefox Nightly they work. That's probably something you should keep your eye on because it's probably going to come out soon. So let's talk about some incremental improvements that you can make to your code. I like to take the ideal of less is more. There's a lot of stuff that the browser does by default that people just write CSS for anyways, that you don't need to. Like a lot of things, people will write display block on a lot of things that are already block elements in the DOM, and you don't need to write that at all. There's no point. Things like setting your element's border color to your font color. You don't need to do that. By default, browsers will set border colors of elements to their font color. So you just have to set font color and border color works. So there's a lot of just tiny things that you can do to just clean up your code. You don't have to worry about reading it anymore. And so really, it's does the browser default to this value? Delete it. Can this be done cleaner? Let's do it in a cleaner way. So you should focus on less code as the solution. So, as I said, it's demo time. If any of you want to play around with my demo, there's the link. The slides will also be up on Drupal Camp Ottawa. Currently are up on Drupal Camp Ottawa. So you can also reference this later. You're welcome to mess around with it while I'm messing around with it, but you don't have to. So the first thing we're going to talk about is custom properties. Custom properties are just variables. If you're any other kind of developer, you go, what's a custom property in CSS? It's just a variable. I don't know why they didn't call them variables. Because that's literally all they are. But that's what they are. And I will not bore everyone with explaining what a variable is, aside from the fact that it is a value that can be reused over and over again and declared in one spot. And the other thing that's nice about custom properties, you can set up defaults, which we'll also look into. So I have just a really quickly thrown together card layout. One of the cards is a bigger card. And you'll notice that the current aspect ratio of these cards might not be accurate. These cards look fine, like they could be 3x2. That one's not 3x2. We'll get into that. So we have this layout here, and I'm going to see if we can, it would be helpful if we can do two beside each other. But I don't know, that might be a little too squished for people. I don't know if people can, I'll leave it to the crowd. If we're okay working like this for now, we'll work like this for now. So, and I guess the one thing I can do to pretend that we have a bigger screen is zoom out. So we can really see the shape of the cards. So, the first step I like to do when I think of custom properties is colors. Colors are your prime example for what are custom properties good for. Generally for custom properties, you want to define them in the root. Because they follow CSS's specificity flow, you always want to define your custom properties as high as possible. So when you need to override them, you don't have to worry about where you set them in your selectors. So if they're always defined in the root, you know if I define them literally anywhere down below the root, my override will work. So, to set a custom property, we can just do like, I don't know, we'll call it light blue. And we will make it our light blue color here. And we'll have our dark blue. We'll make it that color. And you can see we also have a red color here, so we'll start by defining it and then we'll go find it. So there it is there. Throw that guy up there. And technically we have like a white color here. I still recommend people make a variable for white, just because it at least allows you, if you need to change your white to a slightly less white, perhaps for dark mode, you can do that easily at the root and not have to worry about where else you're using the hex code for white. And so, then the next thing we just want to do is we will grab our variables here. Oh, I don't want to select all of them. I just want to select. We'll select all of them and then we'll fix it. I'll copy this. So to declare our variable, just var, or use our variable, sorry, var dash dash the name of the variable. And for this guy, I will place that. I guess behind the scenes, I did a command to select all of the versions of that color that are on the page. So anywhere I'm using that is now, sorry, these pop-ups is now using this variable for light blue. So we'll do the same for our dark blue. I'm just going to copy that. And we will select all. And we'll replace it with var dark blue. Fix our one up here. And then do the same with our red. Red. Fix that guy. And we'll do the same with our white. Okay. So again, nothing's changed on our front end. It's all the same. But if someone comes along and says, hey, Drupal Camp Auto is no longer using this dark blue, it's now a slightly lighter blue. We just change it in one spot and we hit save, and then our slightly lighter blue works everywhere. Now, obviously you wouldn't want to do that because I would question the contrast level of that, but it makes it very easy to globally change all of your values all at once. Another thing I like to make into custom properties are actually border radiuses, because a lot of things tend to scale off of border radiuses. In this quick example I have, I don't actually, actually I do. I have my border radius for my little tags here. If we make it a little bit bigger for this again. So in our tags here, I have this border radius, which is half of our 0.75 rem, whereas our card is using 0.75 rem. So that could be an argument to make a card border radius, so make it 0.5 rem, and then we'll grab our variable here and we'll go use it where we need to. So that guy needs to use that. Again, no change, that's the point. And then if we go down to here, just in our calc function here, we can just paste our custom property, and now those two things are linked together. So if we say, oh, we actually want a 2 rem border radius for cards, now our little tags will also update as we change that value. Or we can, oh, we actually only want like a 1.25 rem border radius. Now we've got just a little curve here, and then basically an almost imperceptible curve there. So this can be really powerful. Where you get into problems with custom properties is, let's say, we ignore my advice of always declare your custom properties at the root. And we go, well, cards need a card border radius, and so I'm gonna do card border radius here. There's no change that you can see on the front end right now. But if we were to say, oh, this is some special card group on the front page, these cards need to look a little different, you wouldn't do that. Don't change card values randomly on your site. Those should probably all be the same. We can say, okay, for this card group, we actually need our card border radius to be 2 rem. And nothing changes. Because you're declaring your card border radius on the card class itself. So you would have to then do .card in here and declare it there. And then it works. And you go, okay, well, what's the big deal? I am of the opinion that removes the point of using the custom property, because you already had to now go into your selector for the card and change it, in which case, why are you not just changing the border radius of your card? Like, embrace the custom properties, always declare them at the root. Like so. And then, if we do our card group here, and we do card border radius to rem. Now it updates just fine because it's more specific. The one more bit of advice I have for custom properties is you don't actually need to declare them at all. And what I mean by this is if we take our little card border radius here. Now this is more of a you're writing a reusable system kind of problem. If you're trying to write reusable styles, you might say, well, actually, like I have a default in my mind, but someone else might want to change that later on. And I don't want to worry about specificity issues. What if my root file gets loaded after their root file? Then mine's more specific, so it doesn't matter what they set it to. So you can pass in a default value, which is just a comma. You name the variable, and then you pass a default value. And then, why I say this is more for like if you're trying to make reusable styles, is you then have to do that everywhere that you're doing it, which adds more work for you, but makes customizing it down the line a lot easier. You don't have to think about it. So now, essentially the same thing. But now it doesn't matter, like if I come in and declare anywhere in this DOM before a card border radius is used, doesn't matter the specificity, it works. So that's one more thing you can do with CSS variables. You can go overboard with that, and you can do something like, we'll try the border radius one again. So you have card border radius, which actually defaults to border radius, which actually defaults to that. And this is not too bad to look at, but like you can see where all of a sudden you're going to get into like these unbelievable chains of things that may or may not be what you're looking for, but they can get pretty convoluted really fast. So that is more how you would upgrade your site with a very minor improvement of just swapping things to custom properties where you need to. The other thing we talked about is like less is more and readability. You have stuff like this, where it's like top right, bottom left. For any of you who do not know, there's now a property called inset, which is all 4 of these in one. And so you can clean up some of your lines of code and just do inset 0, and that's exactly the same thing. You can't get into, like, because it's top right, bottom left. So like you can do like, I don't know, 0, 1 rem, 0, 1 rem. Like you can still pass in all those values if you want. But especially if you have just all 4 coordinates are 0, just use inset 0. It's a lot faster. We'll go back to the next incremental improvement, selector nesting. So, for so long, the main argument for using Sass and CSS and all those is selector nesting makes it so I don't hate writing complex selectors. I can actually just chain them, it'll be fine. Valid argument, but now some of you might actually have noticed when I was doing that custom property example, this is just a CSS file. Selector nesting is just built in now. You can absolutely just do like, here's like your card hover. So you can just do and hover instead. And move that in there. Delete that guy. And there you go. And our hover state still works, just makes the card just a touch bigger. So you can clean up a lot of your styles by nesting them. Same with this guy for our wonderful stretched link kind of feature here. You can just do and after, paste that in there. We can get rid of this whole block of code, and we still have the same functionality. The link is still clickable no matter where you are on the card. Yeah, so we can go through a lot of that nesting stuff. I won't go and nest this whole file for you, but the next thing, we're going to move into embracing modern methods. And there's a lot of media queries out there. And there doesn't need to be that many media queries out there. There's a lot of media queries being like, oh, when the site gets smaller, do we need to increase the font size? Do we need to decrease the font size a little bit? Can we, this grid layout, depending on our layout, like screen size, we need to adjust the grid so there's so many items there. I'm not saying media queries are a bad thing. It's just there are some newer methods that you don't need them at all. One example, there's 2 examples I really like, is a method called clamp, which will do it here. So clamp, if we do an example of width, because so there's a min width property, there's a width property, and there's a max width property. So we could do like, I mean, you'd never apply this to the root, but just for the sake of example, we want the root only needs to be 36 characters at minimum. It should never go below that. And maybe we want to always take this so that it just tries to do what it can, and then a maximum width of, I don't know, 76 characters. So like you can have all these 3 properties. Or you can just pass in a method called clamp, and it takes a min value, a desired value, and a max value. This is the exact same. So you can get rid of that. Now, widths are situational. You might not always need a clamped width. Where it's kind of nice is it works on font size. So you can do a clamp on font size where you might say maybe like 0.85 rem is how small I'd like my text to be at like a minimum, and then I would like my main font size, and then maximum 1.25. Nothing huge, just little size increases. For your main value, you can do something like 0.75 rem plus 2 view width. So 2% of your view width will be added to your font size. So you get a font size that becomes dynamic with how wide your page is. We'll just do this as an example. And so as we shrink it, if I got the numbers right, sometimes I put in numbers that don't actually make sense. I think that's the case. I think it's always, it might be 0.5 rem plus view width, we'll see. Did I do it? Okay. Do it. 2 rem, or 0.2 rem. You should see, there we go. So as we increase our width of our page, our font size is actually increasing. Again, for font size, you probably don't want to do it too much. Perhaps even 0.25 is a little much. Maybe 1, like it's just enough to give it a bit more space. So you can do like a clamp on font size to make your font responsive. And you can also, so let me just zoom around here. I'm going to grab these 2 selectors that I have, and we have a card grid. So I have this set up where my card grid is 3, all equal sized. I have my 1000 pixel breakpoint here where I want it to be 2, equal sized. And then when it's even smaller, it all just needs to be 1. Makes sense for media queries, but we actually don't need a media query to do this. We can use a thing in grids. So instead of saying we have 3 columns, we can say, please auto-fit our columns. And instead of 1 FR, we can pass in a method called min-max. And we can say 30 characters is the minimum width of a column. Otherwise, take up one fractional unit. So, save that. We'll get rid of our media queries here. And then, as we increase, you can see we have our 3-column layout. And then when those 3 columns don't fit anymore, it goes down to 2. And then when those 2 columns don't fit anymore, it goes down to 1. No media query required. So there's still, like, media queries are still important. You might want to have a class that allows you to span columns. You might need to turn that off at smaller screen sizes because it'll add columns to your auto scaling width thing. But as far as just like handling the width of all of the cards and the columns, just let grid handle it. It knows how to do it. Just let the browser do it. Now, I'll talk about pros and cons that we were going to cover. This does have a con of you don't get to control how many columns there are. So we'll see if I can actually make this happen. If we zoom out, oh, it might not work because my container is fixed width here. But technically, you could go wide enough that you would get 4 columns. Or you might go down to 2 and have like an odd number of cards and there'd be one dangling one at the bottom. Kind of have to decide, is that something I'm okay with for not having 3 media queries to make sure my columns are all working? That is a personal preference. I try to spin clients on this one because it's a lot less work for the browser to do. But it's just something to keep in mind. And I realize we're like out of time, but the next thing that I really wanted to talk about, and then we'll go through other things pretty quickly, is container queries. If anyone was at Megan's presentation, she mentioned them. They're really powerful. So the one thing you can do with container queries is I have this class for my cards called right here, feature. Oh, it's a media query. So I have a media query that when the screen is wide enough, this horizontal card will work. And then when the screen is small, it won't anymore. What we can do with container queries, and perhaps for the sake of time, I will very quickly just check out what I did and go through it with you guys. So let me just... like that, just the page. Okay, so we had our horizontal class, and I decided I didn't want that in. I want cards to just know if there's enough room, please take up that much room. And so we have to make some changes to our HTML. I have wrapped all of my cards in a div that just has a thing called container type inline, and in my styles, I just say container type inline has this cool container type property called inline size. And then in my card, instead of the media query at the bottom of the page handling this horizontal stuff, I just say, hey card, if you're in a container whose width is greater than 575 pixels, we're going to change some stuff. We are going to turn on display flex, so we go sideways. We're gonna set some max widths and stuff. Have something we could fix. Could be this, where we go top. Inset 0 auto 0 0. Oh, I forgot. A colon. That would do. So now, if a card just has the space, which let's show that off. Let's just grab any of these cards. And I'm just going to throw it right at the bottom of the page, and we'll see what happens. So now, no padding, but if a card just has the space to go horizontal, it will go horizontal. Generally, I find that's a better solution than trying to manually configure what card needs to be horizontal and what doesn't, because then you can kind of go into your layout and control the sections in your layout instead of the card telling the layout, I'd like to be wider. It's just the layout tells the card, you're in a wider container. Please adjust. So container queries are quite powerful. And for this presentation, I was kind of hoping that I could talk about style queries, but Firefox still isn't supporting it. Because you get things where you can do very useful things like Megan showed, where you can set a variable called theme and set it to dark. You can do very silly things where you can have a flag called use important. And you can have a style that does not use important until you set that custom property on it, and then all of its styles become important. Don't do that. You can, but we were playing around with that idea for like utility classes, because generally when you want, like, if I tell you that you're display flex, I actually don't care what anything else is saying. I've added the display flex class. You should be display flex. And we're trying to think of a less destructive way of doing that than hard coding important into all of our utility styles. container style queries would do that, because then you can tell it when it needs to like bump that up in priority. It doesn't seem like it's going to be supported quite yet. It is in nightly though, so like I said, when something hits nightly, keep an eye on it. Yeah, so container queries are quite something, and like if you wanted to, so container, and then you could do like use.
You can name the containers too.
That's yes. Style. Use important. True. You could have something like that, and I don't know. You would.
Right now, it's going to use the next parent container, but you could name the container
Yes.
something else and say use this one.
Important. So like you could have something like this, where like you're checking for this flag and then changing styles based on that. Okay, and then the last thing, promise it's the last thing I wanted to talk about, because it's very cool, is a thing that is now supported as of 2026 called anchor positioning. Anchor positioning takes your position absolute and position relative and makes it way more useful. I was going to say actually useful, but that's absolute positioning is useful. This takes it to a whole different level. So something that you may notice is on my cards, all of my tag things here are positioned kind of at the bottom of this image. And I have done that through a lot of hacky maneuvers here. I take my footer, I position it absolutely, I fake an aspect ratio on it so it fits where the image should end. And then I do a lot of flex stuff to place them and absolute position them, and then like there's a whole lot going on here to make it look like this might be at the bottom of this image. With anchor positioning, you don't need a lot of this hacky stuff. So let me just quickly we'll do it to the image. So on the image, we can do something called anchor name. Call it card image. Same syntax as the custom properties. Starts with double dash. Then we can come to our footer here, which is what I have positioned all wonky. And for the sake of our example, I'm going to remove all of our weird padding. And that's going to break a lot of the display here. Then, what I can do, you keep your position absolute, but here, you can say, I would like my position bottom to be an anchor of card image. And it didn't work. Why? These holes. I missed a part. Oh. Did I do that right? Anchor card image. Right. Needs a second value. It needs to be at the bottom of our image. And now it is. And we might say the right, probably want it to be the whole width. Do card image right. Now these particular changes, you won't see a big jump in. Card image left. And top, I don't know if we really care about now, because it already knows it's positioned at the bottom here. We don't have to do any fakery with weird paddings, and it is just at this bottom part. And it allows us to remove our inset from this guy, where we have our container query moving those tags. And now they're all aligned, and it's perfect. And so you can do a whole lot of interesting things with this. let's say you wanted your, well, I mean, we'll remove the right one for now. You can tell it, like my left, I need to be on the image right. And it'll move. Now I have overflow hidden, or overflow rather, hidden on my card. But you can kind of see it moved them.
Yeah.
So you can do a lot of powerful things with this. Now my example is really, it needs to really be there on it. I broke something real bad with this. So you can do some really cool things with this. They are still scoped in a sense. So you can't take like something that's like 10 levels down in one element and say like, hey, position yourself in like a completely different scope of the page somewhere else. This works mostly because card footer and card image are on the same level. So like card footer is here, and then on the same kind of scope, card image is there. It just allows you to more position things, and they'll work inwardly scoped. So you could anchor card footer if card title had a positioning. You could anchor the footer to the title. You just can't anchor the footer to anything outside of this card. It won't work the way you expect it to. Yeah, so those are the main things I wanted to go over. I had a backup thing about Sass, but we've already gone over time. So, yeah, that is my presentation. I have some very useful developer documentation here for you. And one guy on YouTube, his name's Kevin Powell. I think he lives in Montreal. He's very good at this stuff. I watch his videos all the time. If you want new, cool CSS stuff, he's a guy to keep an eye on. And I guess if anyone wants to chat after this about CSS things, I'm always open. Or JavaScript or accessibility. That's kind of my wheelhouse there. But yeah, thank you. And yeah, we're over time. If we have questions, we can talk outside. Yeah.